My husband slapped me when I told him I was pregnant. Evan and I had been trying to have a baby for 2 years. We've had 2 years of negative tests and wondering if something was wrong with me. Then last month I missed my period. Then I took 5 tests in one sitting because I couldn't believe the first 4. When those 2 pink lines finally appeared, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried until my sister Carrie talked me down through the phone. She told me I needed to tell everyone and make it special. Don't just blurt it out over dinner. Throw a party, invite everyone who matters. Turn this into a memory we'd tell our kid about someday. So that's exactly what I did. 7 weeks later, my house was packed with everyone I loved. My parents stood by the appetizer table. Carrie kept shooting me excited glances from across the room. Evan's parents had flown in from Arizona, and his younger brother Jeff had shown up early to help me set chairs and arrange the gift table. Evan worked the crowd like he always did, shaking hands and making people laugh, being the charming husband I'd fallen for 6 years ago. I watched him from the kitchen doorway and felt my heart swell. Tonight, I was going to make him the happiest man alive. I grabbed a fork, tapped it against my wine glass, and the room slowly went quiet. 40 faces turned toward me. My mom was already tearing up, and she didn't even know yet. Evan made his way through the crowd and stood beside me, his arm wrapping around my waist. He looked at me with warm, curious eyes, completely clueless as to what I was about to say. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice shaking a little. "I know some of you traveled really far, and I promise it's worth it." I looked up at Evan and smiled. "We're having a baby. I'm pregnant." The room exploded. My mom screamed. My dad started clapping so hard I thought he'd hurt his hands. Carrie was jumping up and down yelling, "I knew it," even though she actually did know. Everyone was hugging and crying, and the energy in that room felt like pure love. I turned to Evan, expecting him to lift me up or spin me around or do something romantic. Instead, he was frozen. His arm had dropped from my waist. His face had gone completely white. "Evan?" I reached for him. "Baby, aren't you excited? We're finally going to be parents." And that's when it came. The slap to my face that hit so hard I crashed backward into the gift table. The pain was instant and blinding, like someone had taken a hot skillet and pressed it flat against my skin. The music kept playing for 3 more seconds before someone killed it, and then there was nothing. Just silence. Just the ringing in my ear where his hand had landed. I looked up at my husband from the floor and didn't recognize the man standing over me. His face was twisted into something ugly, his chest heaving, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You cheating whore!" he yelled. "You really thought you could pass off someone else's baby as mine?" I couldn't speak. My cheek was on fire and my brain couldn't process what was happening. "Evan, what are you talking about?" I finally managed. "I've never cheated on you. I would never do that to you." He laughed and it sounded like something breaking. "Stop lying." He was screaming now, veins bulging in his neck, spit flying from his mouth. "You can't be pregnant with my baby Marina. I had a vasectomy 4 years ago before we even got married. I can't have babies." The words hit me harder than his hand did. A vasectomy. 4 years ago. He'd been letting me cry over negative tests for 2 years, knowing the whole time it was impossible. "So whose is it?" he continued, his voice getting louder. "Who have you been sleeping with behind my back? How long has this been going on?" The room was still dead silent. My mother had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. My father looked like he wanted to end someone but couldn't make his legs move. And then someone was kneeling beside me, warm hands on my shoulders, helping me sit up, brushing glass away from my dress. I looked and it was Jeff, his face pale with shock as he stared at his brother like he was seeing a monster. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jeff said, his voice shaking with anger. "You just hit your pregnant wife in front of everyone." He helped me to my feet and positioned himself between me and Evan like a shield. Evan was pacing back and forth like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair. 2 years I let you make me feel guilty for not giving you a baby. And this whole time you were spreading your legs for someone else?" He turned to the room, arms wide, like he was inviting everyone to see what I really was. Look at her. Look at her standing there pretending to be confused. She knows exactly what she did. She knows exactly whose baby that is. So there I was, face-stinging entire family watching accused of cheating by my own husband. And the worst part? Evan had proof. A vasectomy I never knew about. In his mind, this pregnancy was impossible unless I slept with someone else. I demanded a paternity test. It would take a week to come back. 7 days until I could prove I was innocent. But I didn't know that those 7 days would be the worst of my life. Because while I waited for science to save me, everyone I loved was about to turn on me. Everyone left the party without saying goodbye. They just grabbed their coats and filed out one by one, eyes down, mouths shut. My parents were the last to go. My father hugged me so tight it hurt and whispered, "I'll kill him if you want me to." But I shook my head because I still believed this was a misunderstanding. When the door finally closed, I turned around and Evan was already walking toward our bedroom. "Evan," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. "Please just listen to me. I don't know how to explain this, but I haven't been with anyone else. You're the only man I've been with in 6 years. There has to be another explanation." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just this cold, empty sound that made me feel sick. "Another explanation? For how you got pregnant by a man who can't make babies?" He took a step toward me. I flinched. I actually flinched away from my own husband, and I watched that register on his face. For half a second, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or recognition of what he'd done. But then it was gone, replaced by that hard, angry mask. "I'd love to hear it, Marina. Really. Enlighten me." I had nothing. No explanation. No defense except my own word, which clearly meant nothing to him anymore. Then let's do a paternity test, I said. Let's prove it scientifically. Because when that test comes back showing you're the father, you're going to have to live with how you treated me tonight. You're going to have to look me in the eyes knowing you hit me and called me those things and humiliated me in front of everyone I love. Something changed in his expression. Doubt, maybe. Or fear. He was quiet for a long moment and I let the silence stretch because I needed him to feel the weight of what he'd done. Fine, he finally said. First thing tomorrow. We sat in the clinic waiting room like two strangers sharing a bus stop. Evan sat 4 chairs away from me with his arms crossed and his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping under his skin. Every few minutes he'd glance at me and then look away like even the sight of me made him sick. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to grab his face and force him to look at me, really look at me, and see that I was telling the truth. But I just sat there with my hands folded in my lap, staring at the wall, trying not to cry in public. The nurse called my name first, and I went alone because Evan refused to be in the same room while they drew my blood. Afterwards, she told me I'd have to wait 7 to 10 business days. I sighed heavily. That meant 7 to 10 days of this hell. I nodded and thanked her and walked back to the waiting room on legs that didn't feel like mine. The texts from his family started on day 2. His mother went first. I always knew you were a whore. Now my whole family knows it too. His sister followed an hour later. You disgust me. I hope you lose that baby. His aunt sent a paragraph about how she'd warned Evan not to marry me, how she'd seen the trash in me from day 1, how I'd fooled everyone with my nice girl act, but now the mask was off. His cousin sent a photo of me from the party, mid-fall, with the caption, "Cheaters always get what they deserve." I sat on my bed reading message after message until my phone screen blurred from tears. These people had hugged me at holidays. They'd sent me birthday cards. They'd told me I was part of the family. Now they were calling me names I'd never been called in my life, and wishing harm on my unborn child. I turned off my phone because I couldn't take anymore. Carrie came over that afternoon and found me still in bed. She climbed in next to me like we were kids again and held me while I cried. "You need to leave him," she said softly. "He hit you, Marina. In front of witnesses. You could press charges. You could take him for everything." My mother called that night saying the same thing. So did my father. So did everyone in my family who reached out. Leave him, sue him, make him pay. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because the test would prove I was innocent and then everything would go back to normal. It had to. I lay awake that night with my hand on my stomach, trying to feel something. Some connection to the life growing inside me. But all I felt was doubt. What if Evan was right? What if the vasectomy made it impossible? What if somehow, some way, something had happened that I couldn't remember? The thought made me sick, but I couldn't stop it from creeping in. I went through every night of the past 3 months in my head. Every time Evan and I had been together. Every moment I'd been alone. Nothing made sense. I knew I hadn't cheated. I knew it in my bones. But if Evan really couldn't have children, then whose baby was this? On day 4, Jeff knocked on my door holding a bag of takeout. "Figured you weren't eating," he said. His voice was gentle and his eyes were soft with concern. I hadn't showered in 2 days. I was wearing the same sweatpants I'd slept in, and my hair was tangled into a mess on top of my head. I looked like a mess. But Jeff didn't seem to notice or care. He just stood there on my porch waiting patiently for me to let him in. And I did. We sat at the kitchen table and Jeff unpacked containers of lo mein and fried rice and orange chicken. He didn't ask me what happened. He didn't ask me to explain myself or defend myself or prove anything. He just handed me a fork and said, "Eat something, please." So I did. Small bites at first because I had zero appetite. But the food was warm and the company was warmer, and slowly I started to feel almost human again. Jeff talked about stupid things. A movie he'd seen last week. A coworker who kept microwaving fish in the office and stinking up the whole place. His neighbor's dog that barked at 3 in the morning every single night. He filled the silence with easy conversation that didn't require anything from me except to listen. And when I finally started crying, which I knew I would, he didn't panic or pull away. He just moved his chair closer and put his arm around my shoulders and let me fall apart. "I didn't do anything wrong," I said between sobs. "I know you probably think I did, but I swear, Jeff, I have never been with anyone except your brother. I don't know how this happened. I don't understand any of this." He rubbed slow circles on my back and shook his head. "I believe you," he said quietly. "I don't know what's going on, but I know you're not that kind of person. Anyone who spent 5 minutes with you knows that." I cried harder because after 4 days of being treated like a criminal, someone finally saw me. Someone finally believed me without demanding proof. Jeff stayed for 2 more hours. He washed the dishes even though I told him not to. He made sure I had his number saved in my phone in case I needed anything. And when he left, he hugged me at the door and told me to call him anytime, day or night, if everything got too heavy. I watched him drive away and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Someone was actually on my side and not trying to tell me what to do or berating me left and right. I survived the week from hell. Evan's family calling me every name. Carrie begging me to leave him. Evan looking through me like I was already gone. The only person who didn't treat me like a criminal was Jeff. He checked on me every day, brought me food when I couldn't eat, told me Evan was wrong for what he did. But I held on because the test results were finally here. This was my proof, my vindication. Except when I opened that envelope, I didn't find salvation. I found something that made everything 1,000 times worse. 3 more days passed before the envelope arrived. Jeff checked on me a few times and brought food when he could, But mostly I was alone in a house where my husband lived 20 feet away and acted like I didn't exist. Evan had been locked in the guest room since the night of the party. He'd leave for work before I woke up. He'd come home after I'd already gone to bed. The only sign he was still living there was the coffee mug in the sink every morning, and the sound of the guest room door clicking shut every night. We existed in the same house like ghosts who couldn't see each other. Sometimes I'd stand outside the guest room door with my hand raised, ready to knock, ready to try one more time, but I never did. What was the point? He'd made up his mind about me. The only thing that would change it was proof. And proof was coming. When the mail truck finally pulled up on day 7, I was standing at the window like I'd been doing every afternoon. My heart jumped into my throat the second I saw the white envelope in the mailman's hand, clinic logo in the corner, my name printed on the front, my entire future folded up inside a single piece of paper. I ran outside in my bare feet, not caring that the concrete was cold, not caring that I was still in my pajamas. I grabbed the envelope from his hands before he could put it in the box. He gave me a strange look, but I didn't care. I didn't care about anything except what was inside. I held it against my chest and felt my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This was it. This was finally it. 7 days of hell were about to end. I was about to be vindicated. I called Jeff first. I don't know why. Maybe because he was the only person who'd believed me. Maybe because I needed someone in my corner when I finally proved the world wrong. He answered on the second ring. The results came, I said, and I could hear the hope in my own voice. They're here, Jeff. I'm holding them right now. He told me he'd be there in 10 minutes and to wait for him before I opened anything. I agreed because I wanted witnesses. I wanted everyone to see the moment I was proven innocent. Then I went to the guest room door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Evan, I called through the door. The results are here. Come out. I want you to see this with your own eyes. I pressed my ear against the wood and heard movement inside. Footsteps. The creak of the bed. Then silence. I knocked a third time. I'm not going away. This affects both of us and you're going to be here when I open it. More silence. Then finally the lock clicked. The door swung open and Evan stood there looking at me with empty eyes. He'd lost weight in the past week. His face was pale and there were dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't been sleeping either. For half a second I felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the slap. I remembered the names he'd called me. I remembered the way he'd turned the whole room against me. The sympathy disappeared. He didn't say a word. He just walked past me toward the kitchen and sat down at the table with his arms crossed, waiting. I followed him and placed the envelope in the center of the table between us. Neither of us touched it. We just stared at it like it might explode. Jeff arrived 5 minutes later. I heard his car pull into the driveway and went to let him in. He looked nervous, which surprised me. His eyes kept darting to the envelope on the table and then back to my face. You okay? He asked quietly. I nodded because I was more than okay. I was ready. I was finally going to prove that I hadn't done anything wrong. He followed me into the kitchen and froze when he saw Evan sitting there. The two brothers looked at each other for a long moment. Something passed between them that I couldn't read. Then Jeff pulled out a chair and sat down, positioning himself closer to me than to Evan. You haven't opened it yet, Jeff said, stating the obvious. I shook my head. I wanted witnesses. I wanted both of you to watch me open it so no one can say I tampered with anything, so no one can claim I switched the results or forged something or whatever other accusation might come next. I looked directly at Evan when I said that last part. He didn't react, just sat there with his arms crossed and his jaw tight, staring at the envelope like he was trying to set it on fire with his eyes. Jeff reached across the table and put his hand over mine. His palm was warm against my cold fingers. Whatever happens, he said softly, I'm here, okay? No matter what that paper says, I'm not going anywhere. I squeezed his hand and thanked him for being the only person who'd stood by me through this nightmare, for the only person who'd believed me when everyone else had already decided I was guilty. Evan's eyes locked onto our hands and something dark flickered across his face. His jaw tightened even more. His nostrils flared. Seriously? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just ice. I'm sitting right here and you're holding hands with my brother? Should I even bother reading those results or do I already have my answer? I pulled my hand away from Jeff's and stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. The sound was loud in the quiet kitchen. Don't you dare, I said, and my voice came out stronger than I expected. Don't you dare twist this into something it's not. Your brother is the only person who's been kind to me while you've been treating me like garbage. He's been bringing me food because I can't eat. He's been checking on me because you won't even look at me. So don't you stand there and act like I'm doing something wrong by accepting basic human kindness from the only person who's offered it. Evan rolled his eyes. Just open the envelope, Marina. I don't have all day to listen to your excuses. I took a deep breath and picked up the envelope. It felt heavier than it should, like the weight of my entire marriage was pressed into that single piece of paper. I looked at Evan and felt something surge in my chest. Confidence. Certainty. I knew I hadn't cheated. I knew I hadn't been with anyone else. Whatever was in this envelope was going to prove it. And then he was going to have to look me in the eyes and apologize for everything he'd put me through. I held onto that image as I slid my finger under the seal. The sound of the paper tearing was impossibly loud. I pulled out the single sheet inside and unfolded it slowly, savoring the moment. This was it. This was my vindication. My eyes scanned the words at the top. Medical terminology. Reference numbers. My name. Evan's name. And then the results. I read them once. My brain didn't process what I was seeing. I read them again. The words were the same, but they still didn't make sense. I read them a third time and the paper started shaking in my hands. No. No, 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 no. This wasn't right. This couldn't be right. There had to be a mistake. A typo. A mix-up at the lab. Something. Anything. Because what I was reading was impossible. What does it say? Evan demanded. His voice cut through the fog in my brain. Read it out loud. I want to hear you say it. I opened my mouth but nothing came out. My throat had closed up. My lungs had stopped working. The room was tilting sideways and I had to grab the edge of the table to keep from falling over. Marina, Jeff said, and his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Far away. Muffled. What does it say? I looked up at my husband. At the man I'd loved for 6 years. At the man I'd built a life with. At the man who was waiting for me to confirm everything he already believed about me. Tears were streaming down my face and I couldn't stop them. It says you're not the father. The words hung in the air between us. Heavy. Final. Devastating. Evan's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker of surprise. He just sat there with his arms crossed like he'd been expecting this all along. Like he'd known from the beginning that I was exactly what he accused me of being. And there it is, he said slowly. His voice was calm now. Almost peaceful. Like a storm that had finally passed. The proof. You've been cheating on me this whole time and now you can't hide it anymore. He stood up slowly and put both hands on the table, leaning toward me until I could see every line of anger on his face. So who is it? Huh? Who's the lucky guy? Someone from work? Some random guy you met at a bar? An ex-boyfriend you never really got over? He was getting louder with each question. Tell me, Marina. I deserve to know whose baby you're carrying in my house. Whose baby you tried to trick me into raising as my own. I don't know. I sobbed. The words came out broken and desperate. I don't understand. I haven't been with anyone else, Evan. I swear on my life I haven't been with anyone else. There has to be a mistake. The lab made an error. We need to take another test. We need to... He slammed his fist on the table so hard the envelope jumped and my whole body flinched. The test isn't wrong. He was screaming now. Full volume. Veins bulging in his neck just like the night of the party. Science doesn't lie, Marina. DNA doesn't lie. The only liar in this room is you. He pointed his finger in my face and I could see his hand shaking with rage. You've been lying to me for months, maybe years. And now you're standing there crying like you're the victim? Like I'm the bad guy for being angry that my wife got pregnant by another man? I didn't do this, I screamed back at him. Something inside me broke. All the fear and confusion and desperation came pouring out as rage. I don't know how this happened, but I didn't do this. I have never been with anyone except you. Not once in 6 years. I don't understand what's happening, but I know I didn't cheat. You have to believe me, Evan. Please. I grabbed his arm, desperate for him to see me. Really see me. To look past his anger and recognize the woman he'd married. The woman who loved him. The woman who would never betray him. Please believe me. Please. I'm begging you. He shoved me away so hard I stumbled backward. My hip hit the counter and pain shot through my side. Jeff jumped up and caught me before I could fall further, his arms wrapping around me to steady me. Don't touch me, Evan snarled, and his face was twisted into something I didn't recognize. Pure hatred. Pure disgust. Don't ever touch me again. You make me sick. Looking at you right now makes me physically sick. I can't even stand to be in the same room as you. He turned to Jeff, who was still holding on to me, and his eyes narrowed. And you, my own brother, sitting here holding her hand, comforting her, being her shoulder to cry on while my marriage falls apart. He took a step toward Jeff and for a second I thought he was going to swing. Did you know about this? Did you know she was sleeping around behind my back? Have you two been laughing at me this whole time? Jeff's face went pale. His arms tightened around me almost protectively. I didn't know anything, he said quietly. His voice was steady, but I could feel his heart pounding against my back. I swear to you, Evan. I just came to support her when the results came in. That's all. I had no idea. Evan stared at his brother for a long moment, searching his face for something. Then he laughed. That horrible cold laugh that made my blood run cold. Support her. Right. Well, congratulations. She's all yours now. You can have her. I'm done. He turned and stormed toward the guest room. I heard drawers being yanked open, clothes being thrown, hangers clattering to the floor. Jeff let go of me and I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, frozen, tears streaming down my face, my whole body shaking so hard I thought my bones might rattle loose. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I'd been so sure, so completely certain that the test would save me, that science would prove what I already knew, prove I was innocent and faithful. Instead, the test had destroyed everything, and it hadn't even given me answers. It just told me Evan wasn't the father. It didn't tell me who was. It didn't explain how any of this was possible. It just left me standing in my kitchen with my whole life in pieces, and no idea how to put them back together. Evan came back 10 minutes later dragging 2 suitcases behind him. He didn't look at me as he walked toward the front door. His face was set in stone. His eyes were fixed straight ahead, like I was already invisible to him. Evan, wait, I begged, running after him. I grabbed the back of his shirt and he spun around so fast I stumbled backward. Don't touch me, he said through clenched teeth. What part of that don't you understand? I held up my hands in surrender, tears blurring my vision. Please, we can figure this out. We can take another test. Something is wrong. Something doesn't make sense. I know I didn't cheat, Evan. I know it. There has to be an explanation. He stared at me for a long moment, and for just a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt, maybe. Or sadness. or the ghost of the man he used to be. Then it was gone, replaced by that cold, hard mask. The only thing that doesn't make sense is how I didn't see what you really were sooner. My mother was right about you. My whole family was right about you. I should have listened to them from the beginning. He picked up his suitcases and opened the front door. I'm staying with Felix until I figure out what to do about the house. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't try to contact me at all. As far as I'm concerned, you don't exist anymore. The door slammed behind him so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. Then his car started. Then he was gone. And I was alone. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor and cried so hard I thought I might shatter into 1,000 pieces. Jeff knelt down beside me and tried to put his arm around me, but I pushed him away. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want kindness. I wanted answers. Because I knew I hadn't cheated. I knew I hadn't been with anyone else. I had never let another man touch me in 6 years of marriage. So how was this possible? How was I carrying a baby that wasn't my husband's? I stared at those results knowing how guilty this looked. Evan was gone. He wouldn't even let me explain. He had already decided I was a cheater and a liar. But I still had no idea how this happened. I didn't know that Carrie was about to ask me a question that would change everything. A question I should have asked myself weeks ago. I called Carrie before the sun came up. She answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting by the phone all night. The results came back, I said. My voice was raw from crying. Evan's not the father. She was at my door within the hour. I let her in and handed her the paper without saying anything. She read it twice, her face getting paler each time. Then she set it down on the kitchen table and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Sit down, she said. We need to talk through this. I sat across from her at the table. The same table where Evan had slammed his fist. The same spot where Jeff had held my hand. The exact place where my entire life had fallen apart less than 12 hours ago. Carrie pushed the results aside and folded her hands in front of her. I need you to walk me through everything. Not the party. Before that. When do you think you conceived? I stared at her. What does that matter? The test says Evan isn't the father. That's the only thing that matters. Just answer the question, Marina. When do you think it happened? I tried to focus. My brain felt like it was full of static. I don't know exactly. Evan and I were together a lot during that window. We had a whole system. Ovulation tracking, temperature charts, scheduled nights. It could have been any of those times. Carrie shook her head. You're about 11 weeks along. That means conception happened roughly 9 weeks ago. Maybe 10. She leaned forward. Think harder. Is there any night during that time that stands out? Anything that felt different or strange? I closed my eyes and tried to go back. All those nights of trying so hard blurred together. The same routine, the same hope, the same disappointment month after month until the one test that finally came back positive. But then something floated up from the back of my mind. A night I hadn't thought about since it happened. A night that was different from all the others. There was one night, I said slowly. My eyes were still closed, reaching for details I'd never bothered to examine before. About 9 or 10 weeks ago, I woke up because Evan was shaking me, gently. Then I felt him kissing my neck. I paused, remembering. I asked if he was in the mood and he just hummed, like a yes, and I remember wanting a baby so badly I went along with it. Carrie's voice was steady. What else do you remember? I tried to pull more from the fog. It was completely dark. We have blackout curtains because Evan's a light sleeper. I couldn't see anything, not even an outline. I paused. Something was shifting in my chest. Something uncomfortable. He never actually said anything. Not one word the whole time. Usually Evan would whisper to me, tell me he loved me, ask if I was okay. But that night it was just the hum. And when it was over he just rolled away and went to sleep. Or I thought he did. I was so tired I passed out again right after. Carrie was quiet for a long moment. I opened my eyes and found her staring at me with an expression that made me dizzy. When she spoke again her voice was careful, gentle, like she was trying not to break something fragile. Marina, I need you to really think about what I'm about to ask you. I felt my whole body tense. Okay. She reached across the table and took my hands. Her fingers were cold. That night. The darkness. The silence. The way he didn't speak. Just hummed. She squeezed my hands. Are you absolutely certain it was Evan? I yanked my hands back like she'd burned me. What kind of question is that? Of course it was Evan. I was in my own bed. In my own house. Who else would it have been? But even as the words came out, something cold started crawling up my spine. Carrie didn't look away. You said it was pitch black. You said he never spoke. Not one word. Just a hum that could have come from anyone. She paused. How do you know it was him? Because it had to be him, I said. But my voice was shaking. He was there when I woke up in the morning. Nobody else could have gotten into our house. What you're suggesting is insane, Carrie. Completely insane. Carrie's face was pale, but her voice stayed steady. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking you to consider something. A possibility that would explain why you're pregnant with a baby that isn't Evan's even though you swear you never cheated. I stood up so fast my chair crashed backward onto the floor. I needed to move. I needed to get away from this conversation. I needed my sister to stop saying things that were making the walls close in around me. No, I said. I was backing away from the table. That's not possible. I would have known. I would have felt that something was wrong. I would have, but would I have? The room was completely dark. Not a single word was spoken. Just that one low hum. His hands didn't touch me the way Evans usually did. Rougher. More urgent. Less careful with me. I had told myself it was because he was half asleep. Exhaustion made people different. Sometimes intimacy didn't have to be gentle to still be love. What if it wasn't love at all? What if it wasn't Evan? Oh God, I whispered. My back hit the kitchen counter and I grabbed it to keep myself upright. Carrie. Oh my God. She was out of her chair instantly, crossing the room to catch me as my legs gave out. Her arms wrapped around me and held me up while my whole body started to shake. Breathe, she said into my hair. Just breathe. We don't know anything for sure yet. This is just a possibility. We need to think about this clearly. But I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't think at all. If Carrie was right, then an intruder had come into my home while I was sleeping. A stranger had climbed into my bed in the dark. My body had been used while I thought it was my husband. And I had gone along with it eagerly, wanting a baby so badly that I never questioned the silence. Never wondered why the darkness felt different. Never stopped to make sure the man touching me was actually my husband. Who? I choked out. The word barely made it past my throat. Who would do something like that? Who has access to our house in the middle of the night? Carrie went very still. Her arms tightened around me. And then she said something that made my blood turn to ice. Who has a key to your house, Marina? The answer hit me like a truck. The only person who had one was Jeff. Jeff had a key. Evan gave him one 2 years ago when we went on vacation and needed someone to water the plants. We never asked for it back. My mind started racing through everything from the past week. His kindness when everyone else turned on me. His certainty that I hadn't cheated. Showing up at my door without being called. Sitting too close on the couch. Touching my knee. Telling me maybe my marriage falling apart was for the best. Being there when I opened the results. Holding my hand while I read the words that destroyed my life. No, I said. But even as I said it, pieces were clicking into place. Horrible pieces. Pieces I didn't want to see. Not Jeff. He wouldn't. He's Evan's brother. He's been helping me. He's been... I trailed off. Helpful. Attentive. Always there. Never surprised by anything that happened. Like he already knew how it would end. Carrie pulled back and looked me in the eyes. We need to find out for sure. Another test. One that compares your baby's DNA to Jeff's. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely stand. And if it's him? If the test comes back positive? What do I do then, Carrie? What do I do if Evan's own brother did this to me? It wasn't Evan that night. The realization hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. Someone came into my bedroom in the dark, got into my bed, and I never knew. I thought I was trying to make a baby with my husband. I was being used by Jeff. Every visit, every kind word, every time he told me Evan didn't deserve me. He knew. He knew the whole time. Now I had to make Evan believe me. He wouldn't answer his phone. He thought I was still the villain, but I knew where he was staying, and I wasn't going to let him hide from the truth anymore. Carrie didn't have an answer. Neither did I. But I knew one thing for certain. Evan needed to hear this. He needed to know what his brother might have done. I grabbed my phone and called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. 5 more times I tried. Each call going nowhere. Each ring making me more desperate. He'd blocked me. Or he was ignoring me. Either way, I wasn't getting through. He's staying with Felix, I told Carrie. I know where that is. I'm going over there. She tried to stop me. Told me I should wait until I had proof. Told me showing up hysterical with accusations against his brother would only make things worse. But I couldn't wait. Every second that passed was another second Evan believed I had betrayed him. Another second Jeff got away with what he did. I grabbed my keys and ran to my car before Carrie could say anything else. The drive to Felix's apartment took 12 minutes. I spent every one of them rehearsing what I would say. How I would make Evan listen. How I would convince him that his own brother had done something unthinkable. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. Felix's apartment was on the 3rd floor. I took the stairs 2 at a time and pounded on the door so hard my knuckles ached. No answer. I pounded again. Evan, I yelled through the wood. I know you're in there. Open the door, please. I figured it out. I know what happened. Silence. Then footsteps. Then the door swung open and Evan stood there looking at me like I was a ghost he'd been trying to outrun. His eyes were red. His clothes were wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Go away, Marina. His voice was flat. Dead. I don't want to hear any more lies. I pushed past him into the apartment before he could stop me. Felix was sitting on the couch looking uncomfortable. I ignored him completely. It wasn't me, I said, turning to face Evan. I didn't cheat on you. I never cheated on you. But someone did get me pregnant. Someone who had access to our house. Someone who came into our bedroom in the middle of the night while it was pitch black and I couldn't see anything. Evan's jaw tightened. What are you talking about? I told him everything. The night I woke up to someone shaking me. The kiss on my neck. The hum instead of words. The complete darkness. The way nothing felt quite right, but I was so desperate for a baby that I didn't question it. The way whoever it was never spoke. Not once. Just that single hum when I asked if he was in the mood. Evan's face changed as I talked. The anger was still there, but it was moving away from me and towards something else. Someone else. Who has a key to our house? I asked him. Besides us. Who else can get in? I watched the realization hit him. Watched his eyes widen. Watched his hands curl into fists at his sides. Jeff, he whispered. The name came out like poison. I gave Jeff a key 2 years ago. I nodded. Tears were streaming down my face, but I didn't wipe them away. He's been so helpful this whole week, Evan. Showing up without being asked. Bringing me food. Telling me you didn't deserve me. Holding my hand when I opened those results. My voice cracked. He knew. He knew the whole time because he's the one who did it. Evan didn't say anything for a long moment. His chest was heaving. His face had gone from pale to red. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely controlled. Get in the car. We drove to Jeff's apartment in complete silence. Evan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping under his skin. I didn't know what he was going to do when we got there. Part of me was scared to find out. Jeff's building was a nice complex on the east side of town. We pulled into the parking lot and Evan was out of the car before I even had my seatbelt off. I ran after him as he stormed toward the entrance. He didn't buzz. He didn't call. He just waited until someone came out and caught the door before it closed. We took the elevator to the 4th floor. Evan pounded on the door with his fist. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the lock clicked. The door swung open. And there was Jeff. He wasn't surprised to see us. That was the first thing I noticed. No shock on his face. No confusion. No panic. He just stood there in the doorway looking calm. Almost peaceful. Like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Hey, he said. His voice was steady. Casual. Like we'd just stopped by for a visit. Evan grabbed him by the shirt and shoved him backward into the apartment. Tell me the truth, he growled. Tell me what you did to my wife. Jeff didn't fight back. Didn't try to defend himself. He just let Evan push him until his back hit the wall. Then he looked past his brother. Directly at me. His eyes found mine and something in them made my skin crawl. Intensity. Hunger. Possession. Like he was looking at something that belonged to him. Marina, he said softly. My name in his mouth made me want to vomit. I've been waiting so long to finally tell you everything. Jeff stood in that doorway looking at us like he'd been expecting this moment his whole life. No panic. No guilt. Just this calm expression that made my skin crawl. Evan demanded answers. I held my breath waiting for denials, excuses, anything that would let me pretend this was some horrible mistake. But he didn't deny it. He smiled. And what came out of his mouth next proved that this wasn't a moment of weakness or a drunken accident. This was planned. This was obsession. This was everything. The corners of Jeff's mouth curled upward in a way that made him look like a completely different person. Not the kind brother who brought me takeout. Not the gentle voice that told me everything would be okay. This smile was slow and deliberate and wrong. The kind of smile someone wears when they've been keeping a secret for years and finally get to say it out loud. You might want to let go of me, Evan, Jeff said. His voice was steady and conversational, as if Evan wasn't pinning him against the wall with murder in his eyes. This is going to be a long conversation, and you'll want to sit down for it. Evan's hands twisted tighter into Jeff's shirt. The fabric bunched and strained under his grip. A vein was pulsing visibly in his neck and his breathing had gone ragged and heavy. Start talking. Right now. Tell me what you did. Jeff didn't struggle. Didn't try to push Evan off. He just stood there against the wall looking more relaxed than anyone in his position should be. Then his eyes slid past Evan and landed on me. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Something about his gaze pinned me in place. He stared at me the way a lion stares down a gazelle. It became clear I was his prey from the moment we met, and he was determined to make me his. Fine, Jeff said softly. His eyes never left mine, even though he was answering Evan. You want to know what I did? I'll tell you everything. But first you should know that I'm not sorry. Not even a little bit. What I did was the best decision I ever made. My chest felt like someone was sitting on it. Every breath took effort. I pressed my back harder against the wall because my legs weren't trustworthy anymore. They felt hollow, disconnected from the rest of me. Evan slammed Jeff against the wall hard enough to make a picture frame rattle. Talk. Jeff let out a small laugh. Having your spare key gave me so much power. Power I've been wanting for a long time. I loved that I had access to your house, your life. He tilted his head slightly. Your wife. The word wife came out of his mouth like he was tasting something sweet. I felt my dinner rising in my throat. Evan's whole body had gone rigid. The muscles in his arms were straining against his shirt. His jaw was clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. That night,
I got falsely accused, suspended from my job, and my wife served me divorce papers, saying I can't be with a predator. Later, I discovered she set me up, so I made sure it cost her everything. Sup Reddit. Imagine if the person who was supposed to have your back during the worst accusation of your life was actually the one who destroyed you. Here's how I found out my wife didn't just abandon me. She orchestrated everything. I, 34 male, work as an academic advisor at a mid-tier state university. I'd been there 6 years. Decent pay, good benefits, boring as hell, but stable. My wife, Marin, 33 female, worked in corporate HR at a tech consulting firm downtown. We'd been married 5 years, together for 8. Looking back, I can pinpoint when things shifted. December, 3 months before everything exploded. She started coming home later. End of quarter crunch, she'd say. Phone habits changed. Face down everywhere. Password changed to something she never told me. When I asked about it casually, she said her company required stronger security protocols. Then, March 15th happened. My supervisor knocked. She looked like someone just kicked her dog. Hey, can you come to HR? They need to talk to you. The tone was wrong. Too careful. Too quiet. Got escorted to a conference room. 3 people I'd never met. HR director, Title non-coordinator, and someone from the university's Office of Institutional Equity. They introduced themselves. Then they hit me with it. We received an anonymous report through our student conduct hotline. The report suggests a violation of university policy regarding appropriate staff-student interactions. Per institutional protocol, we're placing you on administrative leave pending review. I sat there like they'd just told me I had 6 months to live. What? What violation? What are you talking about? The coordinator jumped in. We can't provide specifics at this stage. You'll receive a notice of investigation within 7 to 10 business days that includes a redacted version of the complaint. For now, we need you to surrender your access card and keys and refrain from coming to campus. This is insane, I said. My voice sounded far away. I haven't done anything. The HR director slid a piece of paper across the table. A notice of leave, my name, the date, a paragraph of legal boilerplate, a line for my signature acknowledging receipt. You're entitled to consult with an attorney or union representative, but we do need you to leave campus today. I signed it because what else was I going to do? I went back to my office and exported my entire inbox and calendar to a flash drive. 6 years of records. I'd cut my access 10 minutes later. My supervisor was waiting in the hallway when I came out. She looked like she'd been crying. I don't know what they told you, she said, but I know you. You wouldn't do this. I didn't trust myself to respond, just nodded and kept walking. Handed my keys and ID card to the coordinator at the security desk. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my car in the parking lot with a box of my life on the passenger seat. No job, no answers, and the growing realization that someone had just destroyed me. I called Marin. She didn't pick up. Texted her. Need to talk. Something happened at work. Call me when you can. She replied 2 hours later. In a meeting. What's wrong? I got suspended. False accusation. Need to talk. 3 dots. Then, OMG, are you okay? I'll be home by 7. She got home at 8:30, walked in with takeout from the Thai place we used to go to, sat down across from me at the kitchen table and asked what happened. I told her everything. The meeting, the accusation, the suspension. I told her it was a lie, that I'd never touched a student, never even thought about it, that I didn't understand who would do this or why. She listened, nodded in the right places, said all the right things. This is insane. They can't just believe some random person. We'll fight this. Then she got quiet for a second. I just need to ask, and I'm not accusing you, but is there anything that could be misinterpreted? Any emails that might look different to someone who doesn't know you? No, nothing like that. Okay. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm just trying to understand what we're dealing with. We need to be prepared for everything. I know. This is going to get messy. My office is already asking questions. I need to know you're telling me everything. I am. She nodded. Okay. Then we'll figure this out. But something in her voice felt off, like she was already calculating. Within a week, everyone knew. My phone blew up with carefully worded, hope you're okay messages. A few friends went ghost. People stopped replying once my name got attached to student complaint. My mom called on day 3. I could hear her crying before she said hello. What happened? Her voice was careful, scared. I told her the truth. Someone made this up. I didn't do anything. She went quiet, then said she and Dad had talked. They thought it was best if I didn't come to Sunday dinners for a while. Just until this blows over. My brother called next. 2 years younger, always the golden child. Attorney. Perfect suburban life. Bro, what the heck? It's not true. Then why are they investigating? Because someone lied. He exhaled. Mom's freaking out. With the kids and everything. We think it's better if you keep your distance for now. I got it. I got that my own family was cutting me loose because I was embarrassing them. I hung up on him. My sister sent a short text. Said she needed space to process. Didn't ask for my side. Just shut the door. Only my dad kept calling. You doing okay? He'd ask. When I said I needed an attorney, he wired me $5,000 the next day. You didn't do this, he said. Not a question. A statement. I know. You're not smooth enough to pull off an affair, and you're too much of a Boy Scout to risk your career. Marin played her role perfectly at first, the devastated wife. But there were cracks. She stopped sleeping in our bed, took the guest room, locked the door. She'd disappear for hours and come back saying she went for a drive. Her phone was a vault. Changed the password again. One night I asked her point blank, "Do you believe me?" She didn't even look up from her phone. The screen lit up her face in that cold blue glow. Does it matter? Yeah, it matters. You're my wife. Am I? She finally made eye contact. Because the man I married wouldn't be in this situation. My stomach dropped. You actually think I did something? I think you got yourself suspended. I think you put us in this position. And I think I'm the one dealing with the fallout while you sit here feeling sorry for yourself. Marin, I lost my job. My family won't talk to me. Oh my gosh, enough. She stood up, phone clutched in her hand like a weapon. Do you hear yourself? It's always about you. Your job, your reputation, your feelings. What about me? Do you know what people at my office say when I walk by? Do you know how humiliating it is to have a husband under investigation? The words hit like a slap. She'd never talked to me like that before. I don't care. Her voice was ice. Whether you did it or not doesn't change the fact that you destroyed everything. My career is taking hits because of you. People judge. And I'm tired of defending you when I don't even know if you deserve it. I stared at her. This woman I'd been with for 8 years. Married for 5. Planned a future with. She looked at me like I was garbage she couldn't wait to take out. 10 days after my suspension, the notice of investigation finally arrived. Certified mail. I ripped it open standing in my dad's driveway. The complaint had been filed March 14th at 11:47 p.m. through the online Title IX portal. Anonymous. 2 pages. Single-spaced. Detailed. The complaint said a junior named Alina had been uncomfortable with my persistent attention since January. Said I'd emailed her frequently with overly personal questions. Said I'd scheduled advising appointments during unconventional hours. Said I'd suggested meeting off campus to discuss her academic future. Said another student had witnessed me being overly familiar with Alina in my office. It was specific. It was convincing. And it was complete garbage. I pulled up the flash drive with my exported work emails. Searched for Alina's name. Found exactly 11 emails between us spanning 2 semesters. January 14th. Alina asking about credit transfer from community college. My response. 2 paragraphs explaining the process and linking the transfer equivalency database. No frequent emails, no personal questions. Nothing even remotely inappropriate. Next, I pulled my exported Outlook calendar. Found Alina's appointments, January 18th at 2 p.m. and February 8th at 10 a.m., both during my posted advising hours. Both logged in the student system where anyone could see them. Both during the day with other people in the hallway and my door half open because that's how I always did appointments. Credit card statements showed nothing social, nothing off campus. The complaint was fiction, but it was detailed fiction. Whoever wrote it knew enough about my job to make it sound plausible. They knew university terminology. They knew how Title IX investigations work. They knew exactly what to say to trigger an immediate suspension. Marin knew all of this. She'd heard me talk about my job for 6 years. Advising hours, appointment protocols, the kinds of complaints that got people suspended. She worked in HR. She understood investigations, documentation, risk management. She'd told me once about a case at her company where they fired a manager for harassment based on an anonymous tip. Told me how they couldn't take chances even when the evidence was thin. She'd literally given me the playbook. And I hadn't realized she was teaching herself how to use it against me. 3 months into my suspension, after barely speaking to me, I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table with some guy in an expensive suit, briefcase open, papers spread out like they owned the place. The sound of a pen clicking. He was tapping it against his legal pad, probably timing how long it would take me to process what I was seeing. She didn't even flinch when I walked in. Didn't look surprised or guilty or anything. She'd been waiting for me. "This is my attorney," she said. The guy stood up, hand extended. I didn't take it. Marin slid a stack of papers across the table toward me. Didn't say anything else. Just sat there with her arms crossed, jaw set. I looked down. Petition for dissolution of marriage printed across the top in bold letters. "You're divorcing me." Yes. Her attorney cleared his throat. "We've scheduled a mediation meeting at a neutral location next week to discuss practical next steps. This is a standard no-fault dissolution. Given the ongoing investigation and the need for legal and residential clarity, my client believes this is the appropriate course of action. You're divorcing me 3 months after I got suspended." I looked at Marin, ignoring him completely. She leaned back in her chair. "I can't do this anymore. We've been living like strangers. This situation, it's not sustainable." "What situation? You mean me being falsely accused?" "I mean us. This whole thing made me realize we've been broken for a while. I need to protect myself." "Protect yourself from what?" "I didn't do anything. It doesn't matter what you did or didn't do. What matters is what everyone thinks happened. My job is at risk. My reputation. I can't go down with you just because we're married." I felt like I'd been punched. "So you're bailing." "I'm making a practical decision. This isn't about emotions. It's about survival." She said it so calmly, like she was explaining a business strategy. "I talked to a therapist. She helped me see that I need to prioritize my own well-being. A therapist? Yes. She helped me see that staying with you isn't healthy, that I deserve better than being dragged down by your mistakes. My mistakes? Someone filed a false complaint against me. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and her expression shifted, colder. You still don't get it. It doesn't matter if it's true. You're toxic now, professionally, socially, and I'm not going to let you take me with you. Her attorney shifted uncomfortably. The mediation meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday at 2 p.m. You'll receive the location details via email. We recommend you have representation present. I saw where this was going. She'd already set the narrative. Controlling, unhealthy, unsafe. One call to the cops saying she felt threatened, and I'd be the one in cuffs. Didn't matter what actually happened. Didn't matter that I'd never touched her. All that mattered was the story she'd tell, and she knew I knew it. Fine, I said. My hands were shaking. I shoved them in my pocket so she wouldn't see. Her attorney slid a single sheet across the table. This just confirms you received the petition, not the terms, just service. I grabbed a pen from the counter and signed. Proof they got me to touch the trap. That's all it was. My name on a line saying they'd successfully delivered the papers that were about to gut my life. Marin took the paper, glanced at it, and handed it to her attorney without a word. She didn't say goodbye, didn't apologize, didn't even look at me again. Just walked to the guest room and shut the door. Her attorney packed up his briefcase, mumbled something about being in touch, and saw himself out. I stood in that kitchen for maybe 5 minutes. Then I went upstairs, threw clothes into a duffel bag, grabbed my laptop and charger, and walked out. Locked the door behind me out of habit even though it didn't matter anymore. Drove to my dad's place. 40-minute drive. He answered the door in his bathrobe, took one look at my face, and said, "She did it, didn't she?" I nodded. "You can stay here as long as you need." I slept on his couch that night. Didn't cry, didn't break down, just lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every word she'd said. I started therapy after I couldn't sleep for 3 weeks. Panic attacks became routine. Within days, my mom called. Said the divorce was probably for the best. That maybe Marin deserved better than this situation. That I needed to take responsibility for my part in all of this. Marin had been talking to her for weeks. I could hear it in the phrasing. The way Mom said, "your part," like she'd been coached. Like Marin had already laid the groundwork, painted the picture, turned my own mother into a character witness for the other side. I stopped answering her calls. My brother texted. Said Marin had reached out to him. Told him I'd been difficult, and she'd finally found the courage to leave. Said he was disappointed in me and needed time to process. She'd gotten to him too, probably months ago. I blocked his number. My sister sent an email, long, detailed, about how she'd always sensed something was off about our marriage, how Marin had confided in her about things I'd supposedly said or done, how she was standing with Marin. The whole family turned, all at once because Marin had spent months setting it up. The only person who didn't abandon me was my dad. He called every morning, asked how I was doing, didn't push when I said I didn't want to talk about it. Just let me know he was there. "You'll get through this," he'd say. I didn't believe him, but I appreciated him saying it anyway. I rented a crappy one-bedroom apartment near the highway. It was depressing as hell. It was also all I could afford. Spent my days applying to jobs I'd never get because a search of my name now returned academic advisor suspended pending investigation. Even places that claimed they didn't do background checks would ghost me after the phone interview. I burned through savings. Sat in that awful apartment and asked myself one question on repeat. Who benefits from destroying me? The answer was obvious. Marin. Think about it. If I'm seen as an abuser, or even just professionally inappropriate, she gets the moral high ground in the divorce. Judges eat that up, especially in family court. She walks away looking like the victim who escaped a bad situation. I look like the bad guy who got what he deserved. And she gets favorable terms. Maybe even more than 50-50 if she plays it right. Spousal support, the townhouse, everything. But how the heck do I prove it? I called my attorney. Told him I wanted to subpoena Marin's phone records as part of the divorce discovery. He said that was aggressive, and the judge might not allow it without cause. What if I think she filed the complaint? I asked. Can you prove it? Not yet. Then you're asking for a fishing expedition. Judges hate that. Look, she filed for divorce 3 months after I got suspended. She's calling me controlling and emotionally abusive. She's setting up a narrative. Her credibility is on the table. I need to know what she's hiding. He was quiet for a second. Then, I'll file the motion, but don't get your hopes up. It took 2 hearings and a lot of back and forth before the judge finally granted limited scope. Marin's attorney fought it hard, claimed it was invasive and irrelevant, but my attorney argued that her abuse allegations made her credibility and pattern of behavior directly relevant to the divorce. The judge approved call and text logs only, no message content, for a limited date range. I'm allowing this narrowly, the judge said. Call logs and metadata from March 1st through March 31st. Nothing more unless you show cause for expansion. 2 weeks later, I finally had the records. I spread them out on my card table and started digging. I became the kind of guy who saves PDFs like their ammo. March 12th, 3 days before I got called into HR. Marin sent 14 texts to a number I didn't recognize. I Googled it. Nothing. Ran it through a reverse lookup service. Nothing. My attorney subpoenaed the subscriber information. It took another 3 weeks to get anything useful. Finally got it. Keaton. Same company as Marin. Same department. I looked him up on LinkedIn. Senior HR business partner. Specialization, employee relations and compliance. The guy who handled investigations and wrote up termination reports. The guy who'd know exactly how to draft a Title IX complaint. I kept digging. The pattern was clear. March 13th, 6 texts. March 14th, 11 texts ending at 11:52 p.m., 5 minutes after the complaint was filed at 11:47 p.m. March 15th, 9 texts starting at 10:30 a.m., 15 minutes before I got called into HR at 10:45 a.m. The timeline was damning, but I needed more. My attorney filed a motion for expanded discovery. We had enough to show a suspicious pattern. The judge allowed us to request Marin's work login metadata, just portal access logs, nothing internal, for the same date range. Her employer fought back with privacy objections. 2 rounds of motions. Finally, the judge narrowed it to public-facing university portal access only and forced them to comply. Found that she'd accessed the university's public website on March 10th, specifically the Title IX reporting portal. Spent 11 minutes on the page. Enough time to read the instructions and figure out how to file anonymously. She didn't file from her work computer, she's not that dumb, but she researched it, probably took screenshots, maybe sent them to Keaton. I went back to the apartment I used to share with Marin, technically still my house until the divorce finalized. She wasn't home. I'd texted her first to make sure. Went into the guest room where she'd been sleeping, looked around for anything she might have left behind. Found an old iPad in the nightstand drawer, the one we used to use for recipes and looking up random stuff. Hadn't thought about it in months. It was a shared household device. We'd both set it up years ago and both had accounts on it. Stayed logged in forever because nobody re-auths on a couch device. I turned it on. Still worked. Still had both our profiles. I called my attorney first. If I find something on a shared device that we both own and I'm logged into with my own credentials, is that admissible? He hesitated. This could go sideways fast. If you access her private account or break any passwords, this becomes a criminal problem. But if it's truly shared and you're using your own login, document everything. Take photos. Preserve the evidence properly. And for the love of everything, don't touch anything you're not supposed to. I logged in under my own account and checked the shared notes app we used to use for grocery lists. Opened notes. Scrolled through grocery lists and to-do reminders. Then I noticed the iCloud photo backup was also shared. Opened photos. Sorted by date. March 14th. Found a screenshot. Timestamp. 11:35 p.m. It was a screenshot of the Title IX portal instructions. The page that explained how to file an anonymous complaint, what information to include, how to make it detailed enough to trigger an investigation. Then another screenshot. Timestamp. 11:38 p.m. This one showed a notes draft. Title. Draft. Review. The text matched parts of the complaint I'd received. Not word for word, but close. Same structure, same phrasing, same fabricated details about late office hours, and overly familiar emails. At the bottom of the note, check with D about wording on the off-campus meeting part. Make sure it sounds specific but not too specific. D. Keaton. My hands were shaking. I took photos with my phone, photographed the iPad screen, sent them to myself, sent them to my attorney. Emailed them to 3 different email addresses just to be sure. My attorney had me meet him at his office that afternoon with the iPad. He took photos himself, printed them, had me sign an affidavit documenting exactly how I'd accessed the device, and got it notarized that same day. We had her. My attorney filed for expanded discovery in May, requested Marin's work emails and workplace messaging for March 1st through March 31st, specifically communications with Keaton. Her attorney lost his mind, filed an objection claiming it was overly broad, harassing, and a violation of privacy. We went before the judge. Family court. Older guy who looked like he'd seen every dirty divorce trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. Marin's attorney made his case. Said I was on a fishing expedition. Said I was weaponizing the legal process to harass his client. Said there was no evidence linking Marin to any misconduct and I was just throwing allegations around because I was bitter about the divorce. My attorney stood up, pulled out the phone records, showed the judge the timeline. March 12th, 14 texts to Keaton. March 13th, 6 texts. March 14th, 11 texts, with the last one sent 5 minutes after the complaint was filed. March 15th, 9 texts, including one sent 15 minutes before I was called into HR. Then he showed the iPad screenshots.
My husband wanted my sister to be his wife for a day. His brother wanted me for life. My husband Damien had this way of dropping bombs like he was asking me to pass the salt. We were eating dinner, pasta I'd made after a 12-hour day at the firm because Damien said he was too tired to cook even though he'd been home since 3. I was twirling spaghetti around my fork when he said, "So my 10-year reunion is next month and I need Nikki to come with me." I kept chewing because I assumed I'd misheard him. Nikki was my younger sister, prettier than me by conventional standards, thinner than me by 15 pounds, and unemployed by choice for the last 2 years because she was finding herself on my dime. I paid her rent. I paid her car insurance. I paid for the highlights she got every 6 weeks because she said dark roots made her feel less confident. I didn't realize I was also paying for her to attend my husband's high school reunion too. I swallowed my pasta and said, "Why would Nikki be coming to your reunion?" Damien didn't even look up from his phone. "Because I need her there," he said. Like that explained everything. I set my fork down and waited for him to elaborate because surely there was more to this sentence. There wasn't. He just kept scrolling through whatever app had his attention more than I did. "Damien," I said, and he finally looked up with that expression he always wore when I was about to inconvenience him with questions. "Why do you need my sister at your high school reunion instead of your actual wife?" He sighed like I was being exhausting, like I was the one who'd just said something insane over pasta. "Because I told everyone I married her," he said. "Back when we first started dating. My buddies met her once at that barbecue and they assumed she was my girlfriend. I never corrected them. I stared at him. I kept staring at him. I was waiting for the part where he laughed and said he was kidding, where this became some weird joke I didn't find funny but could at least categorize as humor. That part never came. "You told your friends you married my sister," I repeated slowly, making sure I understood the words coming out of his mouth. "It's not a big deal," he said, picking his fork back up like we were done discussing this. It was easier than explaining. "And honestly, babe, you know how those guys are. They're shallow. If they remember Nikki being hot and they've spent 10 years thinking I locked that down. I can't show up with someone different and explain that actually I married the other one. The other one. I'd graduated top of my class at law school. I'd made partner at 33. I'd bought us this house, the cars in our driveway, and every piece of furniture Damien was currently sitting on. And I was the other one. I could feel something cold spreading through my chest, but I kept my voice steady because that's what I did. I stayed calm. I was reasonable. I didn't make scenes. "So your solution," I said, "is to bring my sister as your fake wife to a reunion full of people I'll never meet. And I'm supposed to just be okay with that?" Damien reached across the table and grabbed my hand like he was comforting me through my own confusion. "It's one night," he said, squeezing my fingers. "Nobody will ever know. These people don't matter. I'll make it up to you, I promise. We'll do a nice dinner after, just us. Whatever restaurant you want." He smiled at me with those blue eyes that used to make my stomach flip, and I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was so desperate to keep him happy that I'd agree to anything if he just promised me a nice dinner afterward. And the worst part? He was probably right. He'd been training me to accept less since the day we met. "I don't know, Damien," I said, and I watched his face change from charm to irritation in half a second. "It just feels weird. Why can't you just tell them the truth?" He pulled his hand back. "Because I've been lying for 10 years, Carissa. What am I supposed to say now? Hey guys, funny story, I actually married her boring older sister who works all the time." That's humiliating. Boring, older, works all the time. Each word landed like a small punch to the chest, but I didn't react because I never reacted. I just absorbed it and kept functioning. That was my role in this marriage. Provider, absorber, the other one. "Besides," Damien continued, "Nikki already said yes. She's excited about it. She said it sounds fun." I blinked. "You already asked her? Before asking me?" He shrugged. "I needed to make sure she was available first. Logistics. My sister had agreed to pretend to be my husband's wife. My sister, who I'd been financially supporting for 2 years, who called me crying every month about how hard her life was, who I'd given everything to because that's what big sisters did. She'd said yes to this without even calling me first. Damien must have seen something in my face because his expression softened into that fake concern he was so good at. "Babe, don't be upset. Nikki said you should be flattered that she's willing to help. She's doing this for us. For you, really. so I can network and maybe finally land something better than that cashier job you're always complaining about. I wasn't complaining about his cashier job. I was complaining about the fact that he'd had 4 cashier jobs in 3 years and quit each one because his managers didn't respect him. I was complaining about funding his life while he figured out what he wanted to be when he grew up at 34 years old. But somehow that had become me being unsupportive. Somehow everything always became my fault. One night, Damien said again, watching me carefully now, seeing just how much more he needed to push. Nobody gets hurt. And then we never talk about it again. Okay. I nodded. I agreed to let Nikki pretend to be Damien's wife for one night at his reunion. I told myself it was harmless, just an embarrassing lie he needed help covering up. But something about how quickly Nikki said yes kept nagging at me. How she already knew the date before I did. How comfortable Damien seemed asking his wife to step aside for her own sister. I decided I wasn't going to sit back and watch from the sidelines. I was going to insert myself right into their little rehearsals and see exactly how they acted when the wife they were replacing was standing in the room. I decided to help them rehearse because I wanted to see their faces when the wife they were pretending didn't exist, walked into the room and offered to participate. I wanted to watch them squirm. I wanted Nikki to look guilty and Damien to stumble over his words, and both of them to realize how insane this whole situation was. So I came home early from work the next day and found them in my living room going over their story, and I said, I figured I could help, give you feedback on what looks believable. They barely looked up. Damien said, sure, babe, and went right back to whatever Nikki was saying. I sat down in the chair across from them and waited for the awkwardness to settle in. It never did. They just kept going like I was part of the furniture in the house I paid for with money I earned while both of them contributed nothing. Okay, so when they ask how we met, Damien said, leaning toward Nikki with his elbows on his knees, I'll say I saw you across the room at a mutual friend's birthday party, and I knew right then I had to talk to you. I felt my whole body go rigid. That was how Damien and I met. I was standing by the window and he walked up and said I looked like I was plotting my escape, and I laughed and we talked for 3 hours, and he asked for my number before I left. Wait, I said, and they both glanced at me like I'd interrupted something important. That's our story. That's how you and I actually met. The night that started our entire relationship. Damien shrugged. Exactly. I already know it by heart, so I won't mess up the details. Makes it easier. You want to use the story of how you met your wife to pretend you married someone else? You don't see anything wrong with that? Not really. It's practical. I turned to Nikki. And you're okay with this? Pretending you had the night that I actually had? The night I've told you about a dozen times because I thought my sister would care about the most important moment of my life? Nikki examined her nails. I mean, it's not like you own a story, Carissa. Things happen to lots of people the same way. It's not that deep. It happened to me. Specifically. With him. Your brother-in-law. And now we're borrowing it for one night. You'll get it back. She said it like I was being stingy with a sweater. Damien turned back to Nikki like the conversation was over. So after the party, I texted you the next day and asked if you wanted to get coffee. And I said yes, but I made you wait 3 days before we actually went, Nikki said, smiling at him like this was a fond memory she actually had. Because I didn't want to seem too eager. That was exactly what I did. I made him wait because my roommate told me 3 days was the minimum for not looking desperate. Nikki knew this story because I told her years ago, late at night, when I thought I was sharing something precious with my little sister. And now she was reciting it back to my husband like it belonged to her. I told you that story in confidence, I said to Nikki, when we were close. When I thought you actually cared about my life. Damien let out a loud sigh and turned to face me fully. You know what this is really about? You're so used to being the boss at work that you can't let anyone else have anything without controlling it. Everything has to go through Carissa. Everything has to be approved by Carissa. We can't even have a conversation without you hovering over it like a manager. This isn't about control. This is about you giving away my memories. See, there you go again. Your memories, your story, your life. He shook his head. Not everything belongs to you just because you were present for it. I was there too. It's my story as much as yours, and I can tell it however I want. Nikki nodded. He has a point. You can't copyright a relationship. I tried a different approach. Okay, well, what about the proposal? What are you going to say when people ask about that? Rooftop restaurant downtown, Damien said without hesitation. I had the ring hidden in my jacket pocket all night, and I was so nervous I could barely eat. Then after dessert, I got down on one knee and the whole restaurant clapped. My engagement, my proposal. The happiest night of my life reduced to a script for my sister to memorize. That's literally what you did for me, I said, and my voice cracked in a way I hated. That's my proposal. I cried. You cried. The waiter brought us free champagne. I called my mom from the restaurant because I couldn't wait to tell her. That memory is mine, Damien. Ours. How can you just hand it to someone else? Damien's face twisted into something ugly. You know what, Carissa? You've always been jealous of Nikki. Ever since you were kids. She got more attention, she got more dates, she got more everything. And you've never gotten over it. He gestured at my sister. This isn't about the reunion. This is about you still competing with her after 30 years. I'm not competing with anyone. I'm asking why my husband is teaching my sister how to be me. Because she's willing to help without making it a federal case. He turned to Nikki with a softened expression. Unlike some people. Nikki reached over and squeezed his arm supportively. It's okay. She doesn't get it. You think this is easy for me? Damien's voice rose suddenly, like he was the one being wronged. I have to go back to these people and lie to their faces all night. I have to pretend my whole life turned out different than it did. But sure, let's focus on how hard this is for you. Let's make it about Carissa's feelings like we always do. I stared at him. You created this situation. You're the one who lied for 10 years. And I'm trying to fix it without blowing up my entire social network. But you can't give me one night. After everything I do around here, you can't give me one single night without making it weird. 1. What exactly do you do around here? The question hung in the air. Damien's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Nikki jumped in. He supports you emotionally. He's here when you come home from your stressful job. He manages the house while you're working all the time. She said it like she was listing his accomplishments at a job interview. Not everything is about money, Carissa. I looked around at the house I paid for, the furniture I bought, the electricity and water and internet that came out of my account every month. Damien hadn't had a steady job in 3 years. The last time he managed the house, he forgot to pay the water bill and we got a shut-off notice. I already talked to Mom about this, Nikki added casually. She said you'd probably overreact. She thinks it's actually kind of sweet that Damien cared enough about his friend's opinions to keep up the story this long. You talked to our mother about this before I even knew it was happening? I needed advice. She gets it. I don't know why you can't. Damien seized on this immediately. See? Your own mother understands. Your own sister is willing to help. The only person with a problem is you. He paused and tilted his head. What does that tell you? I didn't have an answer. Or I had too many answers and none of them would come out right. Let's just keep practicing, Nikki said, dismissing me entirely. We don't have that much time left. They went back to it like I'd given them permission to continue robbing me in broad daylight. Damien walked Nikki through our first anniversary and the trip we took to the coast, and the time I surprised him at work with lunch. All things that happened to me. All moments I thought belonged to us. At one point I tried to interject again, to point out that the restaurant on our anniversary was French, not Italian, and Damien cut me off. Oh, here we go, he said, pitching his voice high in a cruel imitation of mine. Actually, Damien, that's not exactly right. Actually, Damien, you're telling it wrong. Actually, Damien, let me correct you in front of everyone like I always do. He looked at Nikki and they both laughed at me in my house. I was just trying to help you get the details right, I said quietly. We don't need your help, Nikki said, still smiling from the impression. We've got it handled. Why don't you go do some work or something? Isn't that what you're good at? I told myself to let it go. This was my husband and my sister. They were just stressed about the reunion. None of it meant anything. I was being sensitive. I went upstairs to change and gave myself 5 minutes to calm down. I washed my face, took deep breaths, told myself I was overreacting just like everyone kept saying. I was halfway down the stairs when I heard Nikki giggle. Not her normal laugh, but something softer. Private. I stopped on the landing and looked through the railing, and what I saw made my whole body go cold. Damien had his hand on Nikki's face. His thumb was tracing her cheekbone, and she was leaning into it with her eyes half closed and their faces were inches apart. They were about to kiss. My husband and my sister in my living room in my house. I must have made a sound because they jumped apart like someone fired a gun. Nikki's face went red and Damien's hands flew up and they both started talking at once. It's not what it looks like, Damien said. We were just rehearsing, Nikki said. In case anyone asks about us being affectionate. I stood on the stairs looking down at them, and they looked back up with matching panic, trying very hard to become innocents. Right, I said slowly. Rehearsal. Damien's face relaxed into relief. Exactly. We got carried away practicing. It didn't mean anything. Nikki nodded quickly. We have to look like a real couple. That's literally all it was. I walked downstairs and sat back in my chair and watched them watch me, waiting to see what I would do. And I did nothing. I let them think I bought it. Because I needed time to figure out what was actually happening before I said something I couldn't take back. But I wasn't overreacting anymore. Something was very wrong and I wasn't going to sleep on it. I wasn't going to give them time to align their stories or practice their excuses. Damien first while the panic was still fresh. Then Nikki, alone, without him there to feed her lines. If neither of them cracked, I'd find someone else in his life who'd seen what I was too blind to notice. Someone who owed him nothing. Someone with no reason to protect him. The truth was coming out tonight one way or another. Nikki left an hour later, and I followed Damien upstairs without saying a word. He went into the bathroom to brush his teeth like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just watched him almost kiss my sister. Like this was any other regular night in our marriage. I waited until he came out, and then I stepped in front of the bedroom door. Move, he said. No. He blinked at me like I'd spoken another language. In 10 years of marriage, I'd never blocked a door. I'd never stood in his way. And I'd never been anything but accommodating and reasonable and easy to walk around. Carissa, I'm tired. Move. You're not sleeping until you tell me what's going on with you and Nikki. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. We already explained that. It was rehearsal. You said you understood. I lied. I don't understand anything. I don't understand why my husband had his hands on my sister's face. I don't understand why she was leaning into him like she'd done it 100 times before. I don't understand why you two looked more comfortable together than you've looked with me in years. Damien tried to step around me and I moved with him. His jaw tightened. You're being crazy right now. You know that, right? You're acting like a crazy person. Then explain it to me so I stop being crazy. Tell me one thing that makes sense. I already told you. We were practicing looking like a couple. That's literally all it was. Then why did you jump apart like I caught you doing something wrong? If it was just practice, you would have laughed it off. You wouldn't have panicked. He threw his hands up. What do you want me to say? That I'm sleeping with your sister? Is that what you need to hear so you can feel justified in this little meltdown you're having? Are you? The question hung between us. Damien stared at me and I stared back, and for 3 seconds neither of us breathed. I can't believe you'd even ask me that. His voice went quiet and wounded, like I was the one who'd hurt him. After all these years together. After everything we've built. You're going to stand there and accuse me of sleeping with Nikki because we got a little too into character during a rehearsal? You didn't answer the question. Because the question is insane. He was yelling now and I didn't flinch. No, Carissa. No, I'm not sleeping with your sister. Happy? Can I go to bed now? He tried to push past me and I grabbed his arm. My fingers dug into his bicep and he stopped moving and looked down at my hand like he couldn't believe I was touching him without permission. Let go of me. Not until you look me in the eyes and tell me there's nothing between you two. He yanked his arm free and his whole face changed. His lip curled up on one side and his eyes went flat and cold, and he looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. You want to know what there is between us? Relief. That's what. Relief that I get to spend time with someone who doesn't interrogate me every time I breathe. Relief that I get to be around a woman who actually makes me feel good instead of making me feel like a failure every single day. I have never called you a failure. You don't have to. It's in everything you do. The way you sigh when you pay the bills. The way you mention your job every 5 minutes. The way you look at me like I'm a problem you're too tired to solve. He stepped closer and his voice dropped. Nikki doesn't look at me like that. Nikki thinks I'm worth something. Nikki doesn't pay your bills. See? There it is. Everything comes back to money with you. You can't even have a conversation without reminding me that you're the one with the checkbook. I'm reminding you that I'm the one with the checkbook because you seem to have forgotten who funds your life while you spend your days rehearsing romance with my sister. Damien's nostrils flared and his mouth pressed into a thin, hard line. You know what? I'm done. If you can't trust me after 10 years, then maybe we shouldn't be married anymore. The words landed exactly how he meant them to. A threat. A weapon. The nuclear option he knew I'd been avoiding my entire marriage. Is that what you want? I asked. Divorce? I want a wife who doesn't treat me like a suspect. If you can't be that, then yeah. Maybe divorce is exactly what I want. He pushed past me, and this time I let him. He grabbed a pillow and a blanket from the closet and walked out without looking back. I heard him go downstairs. Heard the couch creak as he threw himself onto it. Heard the TV turn on because even in the middle of a fight, he couldn't go 5 minutes without a screen. I stood in our bedroom doorway and realized something important. He hadn't denied it. He'd yelled. He'd deflected. He'd threatened divorce. But he never once looked me in the eyes and said there was nothing between him and Nikki. He couldn't. Because there was. I grabbed my keys and my purse and walked out the front door without telling him where I was going. He didn't ask. He didn't even look up from the TV. Nikki's apartment was 20 minutes away. I knew the route by heart because I'd driven there dozens of times with groceries when she said she couldn't afford food, with furniture when she said her place looked too empty, with a check for her security deposit when she first moved in because she'd blown through her savings on a trip to Cabo with friends. She called me crying 2 years ago, saying she was about to be homeless. I co-signed her lease. I covered her security deposit. I set up automatic transfers for her rent because she said dealing with money stressed her out. 2 years. $24,000. Plus her car insurance. Plus her phone bill. Plus random checks whenever she said she was struggling. I added it up once and stopped because the number made me sick. And the whole time I was funding her life, she was using that freedom to sleep with my husband. Every hour I spent at work to cover her bills was an hour she spent in my house with Damien. I parked in front of her building and took the stairs 2 at a time. It was almost 11 at night and I didn't care. I banged on her door hard enough that her neighbor opened theirs to see what was happening. Nikki, open the door, now. I heard movement inside. Footsteps. Then her voice, high and nervous. Carissa? What are you doing here? Open the door or I'll keep knocking until someone calls the cops. The lock clicked and the door opened 3 inches. Nikki's face appeared in the gap, looking pale and scared. It's late. Can we talk tomorrow? No. I pushed the door hard and she stumbled backward as I walked into the apartment I funded. We're talking right now. You can't just barge in here. I pay your rent. I can do whatever I want. I looked around at the furniture I'd helped her pick out. The TV I'd bought her for Christmas. The couch where she probably sat texting my husband while I was at work paying for all of it. How long? Nikki wrapped her arms around herself. How long what? Don't play dumb with me. How long have you been sleeping with Damien? I'm not sleeping with Damien. I told you it was just rehearsal. Why won't you believe me? Because I saw your face when he touched you. I saw how natural it looked. That wasn't acting, Nikki. That was muscle memory. That was something you've done so many times your body did it without thinking. You're imagining things. Am I? Then explain why you know so much about my husband. Explain why you two have inside jokes I've never heard. Explain why he defends you more than he's ever defended me. Nikki's eyes darted toward her phone on the counter, looking for backup, looking for Damien to tell her what to say. He's not coming to save you, I said. I left him on the couch. It's just you and me. Sister to sister. Tell me the truth. There's nothing to tell. Fine. Then tell me this. I stepped closer and watched her step back. What's the birthmark on his left hip shaped like? Nikki's face went white. For 1 second she forgot to lie and I saw the answer in her eyes before she covered it up. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You know exactly what I'm talking about because you've seen it. You've touched it. You've been close enough to my husband's body to know things only his wife should know. He showed me a photo once. It was a joke. Damien has never taken a photo of that birthmark in his life. He's self-conscious about it. He barely lets me see it. I laughed and it sounded unhinged even to me. But you know what it looks like because you've been in bed with him. How long, Nikki? How long have you been sleeping with my husband in the apartment I pay for? She didn't answer. She just stood there with her arms wrapped around herself and tears starting to form in her eyes. The same tears she'd used 100 times to get out of trouble. The same performance she'd been running since we were kids. I'm done, I said. Your rent payment stops today. Your car insurance stops today. Everything I've been paying for stops today. You want to take my husband? Fine. But you're going to do it without my money. Carissa, wait. You can't just cut me off. I don't have anywhere to go. Should have thought about that before you decided to destroy my marriage. I walked out and slammed the door behind me. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my keys. I sat in my car for 5 minutes just breathing, just trying to process what I'd confirmed. My husband. My sister. In my house, on my money, behind my back. And they still expected me to stay home while they played happy couple at his reunion. That's when the idea hit me. Damien wanted to bring my sister as his fake wife. Fine. Then I'd bring his brother as my date. Jackson. The one who'd done everything right while Damien floated through life on charm and other people's money. Jackson had started his own business at 25. He owned his house outright. He'd offered Damien a job 3 different times, and Damien had turned him down each time because he said he couldn't work for his brother. The truth was Damien couldn't stand being around someone who made him look bad just by existing. They barely spoke anymore. Jackson came to Christmas and Thanksgiving and that was it. He was always polite to me at family events, and that was enough to convince me to go through with this. I'd walk into that reunion on Jackson's arm and watch Damien's face when he realized his wife showed up with the one person he could never measure up to. I pulled out my phone and found Jackson's number. We'd exchanged contacts years ago but never actually texted. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing. Hi, Jackson. This is Carissa. I know this is random, but I need a favor. A big one. Can we meet tomorrow? Please don't tell Damien I reached out. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. A minute passed, then 2. I was about to start the car when my phone buzzed. Is everything okay? I typed back. No. That's why I need your help. 3 dots appeared. Then his response came telling me to meet him for coffee tomorrow morning. Jackson met me at the coffee shop the next morning and listened to everything without interrupting once. When I finished, he didn't tell me I was crazy. He didn't make excuses for his brother. He just asked what I needed. And what I needed was simple. Damien had spent 10 years making me feel invisible. He'd spent months sneaking around with my sister while I paid for their lives. Now I was going to make him feel exactly what I felt. Paranoid. Jealous. Desperate for answers he wasn't going to get. Jackson was happy to help. The next morning I was putting on mascara when Damien appeared in the bathroom doorway. You're up early. His eyes moved over my outfit. The nice blouse. The jewelry I never wore anymore. Where are you going? Coffee with Jackson. The name landed like a grenade. His whole body went rigid. Jackson was the one person in the world who made Damien feel like nothing. Their parents had spent 30 years comparing them, and Damien lost every single time. Jackson built a company while Damien couldn't keep a cashier job. Jackson owned his house while Damien lived in mine. Every family dinner reminded him he was the disappointment and he'd hated his brother for it since they were kids. Cancel it. I kept applying mascara. No. I wasn't asking. He stepped into the bathroom and grabbed my phone off the counter before I could stop him. What's his number? I'll cancel it myself. Give me my phone, Damien. Or what? He held it above his head like we were children fighting over a toy. What are you going to do about it? I set down my mascara and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd given 10 years to. This man who couldn't even let me have coffee without throwing a tantrum. I'm going to walk out of this house. I'm going to meet your brother. And when I get back, you're going to give me my phone and apologize for acting like a child. I grabbed my keys off the counter. Keep the phone. I'll get a new one. His arm dropped. Carissa, wait. I didn't wait. Jackson was already at the coffee shop when I arrived. He stood when he saw me and pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than it should have. He smelled expensive. Clean. Nothing like Damien's cheap cologne that had irritated my nose for a decade. You okay? He asked as we sat down. You look upset. Your brother took my phone hostage because I wanted to have coffee with you. Jackson's jaw tightened. That sounds like him. Does it? Because for 10 years I thought I was married to a reasonable person. Turns out I was married to a toddler who throws fits when he doesn't get his way. He's always been like that. He just hides it well at first. Jackson slid a coffee across the table. I ordered your usual. Hope that's okay. How do you know my usual? You've ordered the same thing at every family gathering for 5 years. Vanilla latte, extra shot, oat milk. He shrugged. I pay attention. Something in my chest cracked open. Damien didn't know my coffee order. We'd been married 10 years and he still asked me every single time like the information wouldn't stick. I told Jackson everything. The proposal story, the almost kiss on the couch, the birthmark slip, the way Damien had been gaslighting me for months while carrying on with my sister right under my nose. By the time I finished, my coffee was cold and my voice was hoarse. I want him to feel what I felt, I said. Paranoid, jealous, going crazy wondering what's happening. How? I need you around. Pick me up for dinners. Text me when he's watching. Make him wonder. Jackson was quiet for a moment. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. I'm in, he said. Whatever you need. When I got home 3 hours later, Damien was sitting in the dark living room like a horror movie villain. 3 hours. His voice was flat. You were gone 3 hours. We had a lot to talk about. About what? About me? About how terrible I am? Not everything is about you, Damien. I held out my hand. Phone. He pulled it from his pocket and threw it at me. Actually threw it. I caught it against my chest. There's your precious phone. Check your messages. I'm sure Jackson's been texting you nonstop like the desperate loser he is. The only desperate person in this room is you. I walked past him toward the stairs. I'm taking a shower. Try not to have a meltdown while I'm gone. The first dinner with Jackson was on Friday. I wore the black dress Damien said was too much for a Tuesday. Did my hair the way I used to before I stopped trying. When I came downstairs, Damien stood up so fast his chair fell over. No, absolutely not. Yes, absolutely yes. You're not leaving this house dressed like that to meet my brother. Watch me. He grabbed my arm, hard. Hard enough that I knew there would be bruises tomorrow. I said no. And I said yes. Let go of me. Make me. I looked at his hand on my arm, then at his face. Then I screamed. One loud, sharp scream that echoed through the house and probably reached the neighbors. He let go instantly. What the hell is wrong with you? Nothing. I just wanted to see how fast you'd release me if you thought someone might hear. I smoothed my dress. Now you know. And now I know exactly how to handle you. Jackson's headlights swept across the window. I walked out without looking back. Dinner was incredible. Not the food, though, that was good too. The conversation. The way Jackson asked about my work and actually listened. The way he remembered details from years ago that Damien had never bothered to learn. The way he looked at me like I was someone worth looking at. Friday again? He asked when he dropped me off. Friday again. The second dinner was even better. We closed down the restaurant talking about everything and nothing. He kissed my cheek when he walked me to the door and I felt it for hours afterward. The third dinner was when everything changed. I came home at midnight expecting Damien to be pacing or sulking or throwing things. Instead, I found him on the couch with Nikki curled up against his side. Her shoes were off. Her head was on his shoulder. They were watching a movie like this was completely normal. Oh, hey. Damien didn't even look at me. How was your date? I stood in the doorway trying to process what I was seeing.